I want to just try and explain that this is about the future of the Pacific Northwest and the Pacific as a whole territory. And I want to welcome him officially now on board the boat for the first Pacific Forum live tour. The idea we're going to do is have today on the boat and then supper together. Tomorrow will be more adventurous in the woods. I've been told by the locals that there are cougars in the woods and bears in the woods. So just be aware, all right? They don't eat humans, but just keep your ears open. And it's true. In the room is a very eclectic group of people, designers, shipyards, owners, captains, owners reps, people who are in the market of changing this industry. This is what we call the theme of this, change makers. So it's about how do we do things differently? How do we make sure that we can attract the next generation of clients into our marketplace? The reason I say that is because we're in one of the richest territories on the planet, from Palo Alto up to Vancouver and all the region around is unbelievable. And I've talked to Greg several times about this. Is like, what is the Greg and Craig? What is the potential here? It's unbelievable. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute and ask Craig Norris, the Chief Executive of Victor Marina, to just introduce and do an official welcome.
We know we have one of those amazing cruising corridors on the planet. We know that. Everyone that comes here tells us that. We've done it ourselves. It's certainly there. We just have to tell everybody about it, and we also have to build it up with the support infrastructure that it needs. Now, a lot of that's already there. Canada and the US West Coasts have been huge industry in forestry and fishing for decades, hundreds of years. And there's lots of that infrastructure already there. It just has to be modified a little bit for this industry. So the Victoria International Marina was bred out of that. The first of its kind, fully dedicated to super yachts, or large yachts associated, not quite super. We're sort of halfway in between. But that's where the sweet spot is in the Pacific Northwest. My first super yacht forum was, I think, 2017. We were trying to figure this out because the last few years have been a blur. In Amsterdam. One of the things that struck me was this industry talking about that only 4% of the global population that can afford a yacht actually has one. And I'm looking around going, that's insane. And 96% available clientele, that's insane. I've never heard of that in any other industry I've ever been. So who are these people? And I started asking DeVries and everybody else that was sitting around me, what's going on? Who are these 96? And Martin and I took a look at that. He delved into it, and we found that, truthfully, a large amount of that wealth is sitting around the Pacific Ocean. And it's largely untapped when it comes to yachting. And so why aren't they buying these yachts? And that's one of the things that we want to try to figure out. Everyone's got their opinion. Some of them educated, some of them not. And the idea is for us to really get educated on that. Let's do that, and this can be the next great growth in the super yacht business. Can be igniting the Pacific.
So I've been boating on the West Coast for the last 30 years. What I would say is I know a lot of you here, Ted and others, know the coast probably better than I do, but a lot of you that don't, this is not the Mediterranean. This is not the Caribbean, okay? This is not about the parties, the restaurants, the shopping, okay? This is about bears, whales, wolves, cougars in some cases.
Right.
I haven't met any cougars, so I haven't seen any cougars out in the wild. It's communing with nature. Okay, that's what it is.
One of the things I'm trying to get out of this audience and this group is like, how do we change this area to be a growth market?
But when I look at something like Vancouver Island here, I think it's easier to sometimes lose track of just how much detail there is and potential.
Yeah.
You know, like we've just been out on Ascente, and when I look at what we've actually done in a 3-hour cruise, we're dealing with about a middle finger's width.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, and this is just Vancouver Island, so it really is kind of fractal in the detail when you look at it.
Yeah, exactly. There are literally hundreds of islands in this area that you could explore. And most of them, there's not going to be another boat there.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, people know some of the famous names like San Juan Island and Straits of Georgia and Queen Charlotte's Sound, but there is so much more all the way up this coast, right? And like you say, it's really easy to get completely isolated, which I think a lot of boats and a lot of owners are looking to do now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's without a doubt the favorite part that we have as a family is going to places where there is absolutely no civilization. We can literally go out for days, weeks, and there's no signs of civilization. We occasionally see other boats. Typically, we're trying to anchor where there are no other boats, no signs of civilization. You know, it's us communing with the wildlife and nature. That's what we're shooting for.
And how long have you been cruising this area for?
Probably 30 years. Yeah, a friend of mine chartered a boat when I was in my early 20s, and at the end of that week, I said, I'm going to own a boat. The next year, I bought a 43-foot Bayliner and been cruising the coast ever since, and a couple dozen boats since then.
Well, why is it, do you think, that with such potential, like if I compare it to perhaps parts of the Mediterranean where you've got hundreds of times more vessels with really less to see and less to cruise and less beaches to kind of fight over, we still haven't seen that level of development up here.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one, most people still do not realize how beautiful it is and how unique it is. I've not traveled the world, but I've talked to dozens of captains that as they come through here, they've traveled the world, and all of them say unanimously the same thing. This is the most beautiful part we've ever cruised anywhere in the world. I hear it over and over and over again. But I think that what's holding people back is captains are not comfortable with this area. We have extreme tides, we have crazy currents, we have lots of rocks that we have to deal with.
Yeah, I noticed there's a few rather hard-looking bits.
Exactly. Yeah. So you got to be paying attention, and so I think that there's a fear for captains to come up here. But that being said, there's lots of ways in which the boats that currently come overcome that. Okay, the easiest thing is just having local experience on your boat. Having a local captain, could be a fishing captain, tugboat captains. There's hundreds of those available that are more than happy to come out with new boats that know the coast inside out and backwards. And so, if a captain was worried about coming, there's no reason not to do it, because there's lots of ways of figuring out how to get the local knowledge.
But is that sometimes maybe is that a barrier that turns people off? Is that
I think
that ease of cruising, because you can cruise from the Mediterranean, crossing the Atlantic isn't actually that difficult if you pick your weather window. Then you get to the Caribbean, there's no tides. You've got islands that you can hop between. Yeah. It's all very known quantities. You've got agents everywhere.
Yeah.
coming through Panama is a little more difficult. And I've done it before, and when you come out into Panama and into the Pacific, it feels completely different. And you feel alone.
Yes.
And the tides are strong, and the currents are strong, and the waves are big. And I guess that feeling of having to turn and head this far north,
Yes.
I guess is really daunting for a lot of more traditional yacht captains and crews and owners potentially.
Yeah, I think it is, but there's no reason not to, okay? That would be my proposition. If you want to go to the world's nicest cruising area, you're going to have to push out of your comfort zone. If you're going to stay within your comfort zone, this is not the place for you. You're going to have to get out of your routine, but it's well worth it, okay? But even coming up the coast, there's lots of places you can duck into. If you need protection from the seas, there's lots of places you can duck into. And that's the other great thing is, we do not go out in bad water here, ever, okay? There's so many little places you can duck into, have total protection.
I mean, for here example, so you're blowing 50 out here and then you're up in here,
or any of these inlets. All of these inlets. Look there's a short distance. I mean, you can go a very short distance and duck into an inlet and never have to worry about how bad the seas are out here. So many cases, in the worst of seas, we'll go from this inlet to this inlet to this inlet, okay? And we just pick our way down. And yes, it is a little bit more difficult. You have to be more paying attention, but there again, it's well worth the effort.
Thanks so much for joining us. You know, we're up here in British Columbia at Victoria Harbour Marina. We've had a great couple of days focused on the Pacific region, and I think it's pretty special for us to be able to dial in with you, Victor, whilst you're in the middle of a pretty cool trip. I've been talking to the guys here with a bit of background about the Five Deeps and about the Ring of Fire and a bit of the journey that's got you here. So I thought we could start, if you could just tell us a little bit more about where exactly you are, because each time I talk to you, it changes somewhat.
Yeah, well, right now, the pressure drop and the submersible limiting factor, we're about 25 miles east of the island of Samar on the east coast of the Philippines. And actually, in about an hour, I pre-flight the submersible to do a dive to look for the wreck of the Samuel D. Roberts, a destroyer escort lost in the Battle of Leyte. Kind of a follow-on to what we did last year when we found the deepest shipwreck in history, the USS Johnston. So we're spending the next 2 weeks looking for a variety of US and Japanese wrecks in two separate battles from World War II. Today we're going to be going to about 6,500 meters, and the Gambier Bay, an aircraft carrier that we lost in 1944, it could be as deep as 8,000. So this is far beyond the limits of most conventional or remotely operated vehicles.
There's a growing community of like-minded projects and organizations that's kind of adding to a collective willpower for this kind of thing that I think could open a few more doors as well.
Yes, for sure. I mean, you see a lot of yachts at the moment that are being built to carry quite heavy submersibles, 5, 6, 7 passenger submersibles down to depths of 1,000 meters. There's a 3-seater that's with an acrylic hull that's getting down to 2,250 meters. And so those are heavy vehicles. They're almost as heavy as limiting factor, which is the sub that Victor uses to go full ocean depth. And so when you see yachts that are designed with the hangar space and the heavy lifting equipment needed to get a sub into the water and back out again, then virtually any yacht can become a real cutting-edge explorer.
I think building a marina anywhere is a big undertaking, but somewhere a bit more off the beaten path from the traditional super yacht route must have been an interesting process. I think it's been quite a long one to bring Victoria Marina to the international stage.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, the marina here itself first was conceived 30 years ago.
Really?
Long before my time, and I entered the stage and still not a single pile had been driven. So I mean, just the permitting and the process of just establishing the physical structure and getting being allowed to do it is a huge battle. Not alone, once you build that, it's not just a build it and they will come scenario, especially in a new market and somewhere that's a burgeoning market, growing. It's attracting people to that spot and getting the news out that it's actually there. So
yeah, I think the build it and they will come model is interesting. We do see that repeated with a lot of destination marinas.
Yeah.
And I think it is a challenge. There's a lot to it. And is it perhaps that it is difficult? Is that part of the reward here? It's
certainly.
It's why it's such a beautiful place, is because you can't just do what you want, right?
Exactly. I mean, you have to earn it, and if another thing is, if it wasn't difficult, everybody'd be doing it. So it has taken somebody to actually make it happen, to do it, to push through all the barriers, and create that opportunity for the boats to come. Because it is true in that they can't come if there isn't the infrastructure to support them, or else they're just not going to have the same experience. It's not going to be as enjoyable, as safe, as secure as it is in having the proper infrastructure that's built for them. Yeah.
And do you feel that infrastructure is there now in the surrounding area?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's two pieces of infrastructure. There's one that's that service and knowledge. So just the understanding of what people need, and the idea that, what do super yachts need in order to be serviced. So that knowledge, how do you provision, what are the laws? And then there's the physical infrastructure of where will we stay, where will we anchor, is there a shipyard we can pull out and fix if we had to, that kind of thing. So those two pieces of infrastructure. The shipyard side has always been here with such a massive fleet of boats.
Big marine history here as well, right?
So we have shipyards almost 100 years old here. I mean, it's not, and that's old for us, but they're here. It's that knowledge of how to service that fleet of super yachts that's a little, it's here, but we know that if we'll get the attention that we should, as far as the quantity of people that are hoping to come here, we're going to have to grow quite a bit more.
Yeah, we come through Panama and turn right. There is a whole network all the way up that whole Pacific coast.
Yeah, and I think it has a stigma for being remote, and that's what we want. I mean, people want to explore. They want to experience something different other than the Caribbean and the Mediterranean run, and this is it.
That maybe part of the messaging?
Absolutely.
That it's difficult? In a good way.
Yeah, it is. It's going to challenge you as a mariner. I mean, the captains like sailing in here. You have to understand the tides. You have to understand the currents. You have to understand the weather. There's a lot of dynamics going on here. Even, floating logs and stuff that you have to look.
We saw them on the way in. The logs, and if you spend seasons in the Caribbean and the Med, you might never encounter a tide of more than 25 centimeters.
Yeah.
And I think looking here, we've got some of the strongest tides in the world.
Yeah.
But that makes for such a beautiful scenery and so unique. So maybe that is how we market it a bit more, is that it is going to push you, it's going to push the boat, and the rewards are there.
Yeah, and that reward is there. I mean, you get to access things that few people on the planet have ever seen. And they're accessible. Another thing that we don't, that I hear all the time is, or we tell people, you're going to see bears, you're going to see wildlife, you're going to see birds, you're going to see...
Speaking of wildlife, I think I heard something just over there. But maybe an otter, I'm not sure.
But, and often people don't believe that that's true. They see the pictures because everyone tries to market that type of nature, but you're going to see it here. You're going to be pretty guaranteed that you're going to come in contact with that. And you just have to come up to the tourism lifestyle that's here already, the whale watching, the bear watching, you can hear the float planes in the background, the float plane tours to see the same. There's a lot of that going on. So all that kind of stuff is here. You will see it.
Cool. Yeah, and I think that fits in really well with the exploration side of super yachting, right? That you've got the base and you've got that level of support and infrastructure, and then there's just that increasing levels of destination that's as far as your imagination, really, all the way up to Alaska.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people are creating new stories. I mean, it takes people to come in and experience things. We even hear things that come back from our clients that they go out for an adventure. It's like, did you know that this? And we go, no, we didn't. That's really wild. I mean, there's literally 17,000 kilometers of coastline between here and Alaska. That's a lifetime of cruising. I mean, you can spend, that's the same distance as the entire coastline of Australia. in this small packaged place. You literally, no one person could possibly see it all. So you really do get that unique experience. You get to come back and say, I saw this, and wow, I never saw that. I mean, people around here have probably never seen it. So you really do get to see new things. It's exploring, it's real exploring.